And a good evening to everybody out there. Welcome to Carving Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. My name is Bryson Carver, and we're about to do something on Carving Up Live that we've never done before, and that is a two-topic show, at least on a non-predicting show. I think on Friday shows, anytime during the football season where it'd be kind of a limited topic day, I'd just do maybe a topic, maybe a second one, then just go into predictions because that would take in the rest of the time of the show. We obviously tried to go about an hour, more or less, as of late because these insane playoff games, it's been quite a bit more. But two topics. That's what we're doing because that's going to fill up an entire hour without a question. The greatest player in the history of team sports retired on Tuesday. I'm going to lead the show off with that. And Brian Flores, on that Tuesday, dropped some earth-shattering NFL news. He did. And so I'm going to discuss both. I mean, it is about as crazy, as different two topics as I'm ever going to do on this show. It's insane. So let's start with, of course, Tom Brady. So I'm about to utter words I did not think I would utter on Carving Up Live until I was like 30. Okay, maybe not 30. Tom Brady is retiring. After 22 seasons with the New England Patriots and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady announced on Tuesday on Instagram and on Twitter that he is hanging up the cleats. And so, you think about Tom Brady's career, and there's a million different ways that you could go. But first of all, you want to talk about his accomplishments, right? Because, obviously you got to be great on the field and this and that, but numbers, while they don't tell the whole story, they certainly tell a story, and a pretty big one, especially as it pertains to Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. In his career, he won 243 games, completed 7,263 passes, threw for 84,520 yards and 624 touchdowns. He played in 10 Super Bowls, is a 7-time Super Bowl champion, and is a 5-time Super Bowl MVP. All of the above are NFL records. Not to mention that he has 15 Pro Bowls on his resume and 3 regular season MVPs. How he doesn't have more, dunno. But when you think about Tom Brady, and we all know he's the GOAT. I mean, that's widely known. Nobody denies that. But when you think about Tom Brady amongst other GOATs, his journey to becoming the GOAT could not be more different than the other ones in that category of greatest of all time. Wayne Gretzky was so good as a kid. Parents booed him as a kid. Serena Williams had articles written about her by the LA Times when she was 12 years old. Michael Phelps was dubbed by the International Olympic Committee as a prodigy before he could even get a driver's license. Even if you want to say, well, Michael Jordan was doubted early on because he didn't make the high school varsity team as whatever he was, a sophomore. He was still drafted 3rd overall in 1984 by the Chicago Bulls. And by, the first practice, Bulls coaches and executives were like, yep, that's the best player on the team. He's amazing. Tom Brady was in high school at one point, the backup quarterback on a junior varsity team that went 0-8 and scored no touchdowns. That's where Tom Brady was at in his younger years. He goes to Michigan. He's battling for the starting job. He finally gets it his junior year. Has a lot of fourth quarter comebacks. Obviously, that trend became apparent as the years and decades went by. And had a pretty good college career at Michigan. He wasn't a bum. Wasn't, out of this world. Wasn't like, Peyton Manning or anybody like that. But he was good in college at Michigan. So in the 2000 draft, he was drafted like Michael Jordan and all these other great players. Yeah, 199th overall In the 6th round, 6 other quarterbacks were taken above him. They made a whole documentary about that 10 years ago. You add to the fact that his rookie year, you know what his stats were? 1 for 3, 6 yards. It's the only NFL action he got. He was Drew Bledsoe's backup on a 5-11 Patriots team, the first year under Bill Belichick. In 2001, in week 2, the Patriots were playing against the New York Jets. And Drew Bledsoe got hit on the sideline. It was not a career-threatening injury. It was a life-threatening injury. Thank God above that Drew Bledsoe is, doing well today. But it took a life-threatening injury to the starting quarterback for the gates to be opened for Tom Brady to come in. And he never gave the starting quarterback job up in New England again. He led the Patriots, along with an outstanding defense led by Teddy Bruschi, Willie McGinnis, Ty Law, to a Super Bowl title, the Patriots' first title in their history over the heavily favored St. Louis Rams, the greatest show on turf. And before the last drive of that game, the game is tied Rams 17, Patriots 17. And the great, God rest his soul, John Madden, who was calling the game with the great, God rest his soul, Pat Summerall. John Madden said when the Patriots got the ball, "I'm playing for overtime. This is a young quarterback. I don't want to put him in position to screw it up and us lose the game and the Super Bowl." Tom Brady goes right down the field, and Adam Vinatieri, the clutchest kicker in NFL history, hits the game-winning field goal at the gun, and the Patriots win 20-17. John Madden, after that kick went through, said, "What Tom Brady just did gave me goosebumps." And there were many of those to come. After a 9-7 season in 2002, Brady led the Patriots in 2003 to their second Super Bowl title with yet another game-winning drive over the Carolina Panthers, capped off by a game-winning field goal by Adam Vinatieri. And Brady won for the second time the Super Bowl MVP. In 2004, he led the Patriots to back-to-back Super Bowl titles, this time over the Philadelphia Eagles, and he made Deion Branch the Super Bowl MVP. And so, over the next few years, Tom appeared in Super Bowls, Super Bowl 42, Super Bowl 46, both games against the New York Giants, fell short in both. Matter of fact, in 2007, he led a Patriots team to 18-0 through 50 touchdown passes and won the league MVP, but came up short, did not play well against a great Giants defense led by Justin Tuck and Michael Strahan, with Eli Manning capping off a game-winning drive in that game in Arizona. But Tom won some MVPs, he appeared in Super Bowls, and the Patriots won a lot, but ultimately they would end up coming up short in the playoffs many times, either to Peyton Manning, in one case to, Mark Sanchez beat the Patriots. They went one and done in 2010 when Brady won the MVP that season. And so we roll around to 2014. Tom Brady at this point is a young 37 years of age. The Patriots played the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 4 on a Monday Night Football game at Arrowhead Stadium. They lost 41-14, and Tom Brady was abysmal. He got benched for Jimmy Garoppolo. And after the game, and all throughout the week, reporters and the media was like, "That's it. Tom's done. 37. He's old. That's it. That was awful." One reporter even had the guts to ask Bill Belichick, "Hey, Coach, you considering a quarterback change?" And Belichick, who personally, professionally, yes, but personally didn't have the greatest relationship with Brady, was like, What are you talking about? No, they're not going to bench Brady. And the Patriots proceeded to go 10-2 the rest of the season, beat the Ravens and the Colts to get to Super Bowl 49, where they took on, at the time, the defending Super Bowl champions, the Seattle Seahawks, who had one of the greatest defenses of all time, the Legion of Boom. Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, Bobby Wagner, Hall of Fame players. They were down 10 in the fourth quarter to Seattle, and the Patriots looked dead in the water. Tom led back-to-back scoring drives, taking a 4-point lead. That game, of course, was capped off by the iconic Malcolm Butler interception at the one when Seattle infamously did not give the ball to Marshawn Lynch. So against one of the greatest defenses we've ever seen, down 10 in the fourth quarter, Tom Brady led back-to-back scoring drives, winning the game, winning his fourth Super Bowl title after a 10-year drought, and winning Super Bowl MVP for the third time. A couple seasons later, he was suspended for the first 4 games for this little weird scandal called Deflategate, in which the NFL basically said, Tom, we're holding you responsible in part for the alleged deflation, the alleged deflated footballs in the AFC title game 2 years prior against the Indianapolis Colts. Tom was suspended for the first 4 games of that season. He came back, led the Patriots to an 11-1 record from that point on and to the playoffs. They crushed the Houston Texans. They crushed the Pittsburgh Steelers to get to Super Bowl 51. Tom Brady at this point is now 39 years old and facing the Atlanta Falcons, a team that is red hot. Matt Ryan's the MVP. Julio Jones is the best receiver in football. Dan Quinn's defense is flying all over the field. And Tom Brady was straight trash in the first half of that game. Matter of fact, he threw a pick 6 to put the Patriots down in a 21-0 hole. Of course, as we all know, the Falcons scored a touchdown. Little pass by Matt Ryan to Tevin Coleman, who got in the end zone for a touchdown to put the Atlanta Falcons up 28-3. And we all know what happened after that. A Tom Brady scoring drive, a touchdown pass to James White, cut the score to 28-9. Patriots got the ball back, drove down the field. They kicked a field goal, 28-12. After a strip sack of Matt Ryan by Dante Hightower, Brady drove him down the field on a short field, touchdown pass to Danny Amendola, 2-point conversion, James White, and it's an 8-point game, 28-20. After a series of penalties knocked the Falcons out of field goal range, Tom Brady led a 91-yard scoring drive, capped off by a James White touchdown run, and Brady throwing a pass to Danny Amendola for the 2-point conversion, which knotted the game at 28-all. And in overtime, he led a 75-yard drive, capped off by another James White touchdown. And the Patriots came back from the largest deficit in Super Bowl history. The previous record had been 10. The previous record for deficit overcome in a Super Bowl was 10 points. By the way, Brady did that too. Patriots more than doubled that. They were down 25, came back and won on the back of Tom Brady, who won his 5th Super Bowl title and his 4th MVP. And I said at the time, that cemented him, I think we all acknowledged, as the greatest quarterback of all time in the history of football, the history of the National Football League, any way you want to slice it. That win over Atlanta cemented him as the GOAT quarterback. In 2017, at the age of 40 years old, okay, Tom Brady led the Patriots to a 13-3 record. They dominated the Tennessee Titans. They barely survived the Jacksonville Jaguars. By the way, that's another comeback game where Brady was down by 10 in the fourth quarter to a great Jags defense with a stitched throwing hand, and they won that game. They took on the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl, and Tom Brady set the record for the most passing yards in not just a Super Bowl, but a playoff game with 505 yards. However, the Patriots defense gave up 41 to a backup quarterback in Nick Foles, and they fell short 41-33. The following season, 2018, at the age of 41, Tom led the Patriots back to the playoffs. A dominant win over the Los Angeles Chargers and a comeback win over the Kansas City Chiefs, in which in overtime on the game-winning drive, in which they beat Kansas City on the road, Brady converted not 1, not 2, but 3 third down and 10s. And in the Super Bowl against the LA Rams, Tom, though he played poorly, that's the worst Super Bowl Tom Brady ever played in. What'd he do? Led yet another game-winning drive to win Super Bowl 53 over the Rams, to win his 6th Super Bowl title, which surpassed him above Charles Haley for the most rings ever won by a player. And in my view, I said at the time, he's the GOAT quarterback. The 6th ring made him the greatest player in NFL history. The GOAT player. In 2019, he had a down year. Only threw 24 touchdowns in all 16 games. And the Patriots got eliminated. They pulled the Dallas Cowboys. They were one and done in the playoffs. They lost in an upset to the Tennessee Titans in what would prove to be Tom's final game as a Patriot. And it was at that point that the 42-year-old quarterback was dubbed finished. Over the hill. He's washed. Go retire. Tom said, no. I'm done in New England. I'm not done playing football. He goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a franchise that had not been to the playoffs in a decade and a half, and a franchise that had the worst winning percentage of any team in the history of the NFL. They were coming off a 2019 season in which they went 7-9, despite having 2,000-yard receivers. Tom Brady showed up, threw 40 touchdown passes at the age of 43, led the Bucs to the playoffs, and led them to not 1, not 2, but 3 straight road wins in the playoffs over the second-ranked defense in football, the Washington football team. The week after, against a team in the New Orleans Saints that had crushed them in the previous 2 meetings that season, they won on the road at Drew Brees in what ended up being Drew's final NFL game at the Superdome. In the NFC Championship game against the MVP Aaron Rodgers, Tom outplayed Rodgers in the frozen tundra at Lambeau Field and won that game. And in Super Bowl 55 against the defending Super Bowl champs Kansas City Chiefs, Tom Brady led a Buccaneers thrashing of Kansas City to win his 7th Super Bowl title and his 5th Super Bowl MVP. And I said on the show a year ago, I will reiterate it today. That title solidified Brady as the greatest athlete in the history of American team sports. We argue about who the GOAT is in baseball. Some say it's Babe Ruth. Some say it's, Willie Mays, Barry Bonds. There's many arguments for many players. In the NBA, is it Michael or is it LeBron? I often compare Brady to Michael. I think they share many similar traits. But as great as Michael was, and I think he's the GOAT over LeBron slightly, how many titles did Michael Jordan win without Phil Jackson and without Scottie Pippen? As many championships as you and I did. Tom Brady left the Patriots, went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He didn't go to Pittsburgh. He didn't go to a winning franchise like the Denver Broncos. He went to Tampa Bay and won a Super Bowl in his first season in a pandemic season. He returned in 2021 at the age of 44. And all he did was lead the Bucs to the second best record in the conference. He threw for the 3rd most yards in a season in NFL history. He led the NFL in completions and made another Pro Bowl. So, and again, led the Bucs to a win over the Philadelphia Eagles in their first playoff game and trailed 27-3 to the Los Angeles Rams. Midway through the 3rd quarter, the game is 27 Rams, 3 Buccaneers. With a minute left in the game, under a minute left in the game, mind you. The score was 27 Rams, 27 Bucs. Unfortunately, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp put an end to the Buccaneers season and ultimately put an end to Tom Brady's career. And so I think his final act, his final season, 2021, a season that will conclude in 2 weeks' time in Super Bowl 56. One could argue it further cements Tom's legacy. Think about quarterbacks of Tom Brady's generation and how they went out, how they retired. Peyton Manning, in my view, the third greatest quarterback ever. Certainly the greatest quarterback that Tom ever played against. They had a historic rivalry, even though they're very close friends off the field. What did Peyton Manning do his final season? You say, well, he won the Super Bowl. He did. A, he had an historically great defense. And B, you want to know Peyton Manning's numbers from 2015? 9 touchdown passes. 9. 17 interceptions. He was awful. And I love Peyton. That's my guy. Tennessee Vols, right? He was trash his last year in the NFL. Think about Eli Manning. Peyton's brother. Beat Tom Brady in 2 Super Bowls. Outplayed him in both. 1 Super Bowl MVP. Eli Manning, his last year with the Giants in 2019, you know what he did? After the first 2 games of the year, he got benched for Daniel Jones. How's Daniel Jones look today? Let's look at Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers left the Chargers, went to the Indianapolis Colts, and led them to the playoffs. The 40-year-old Phillip Rivers led the Colts to the playoffs in a close game, a tight ball game against the Buffalo Bills. And the Colts on the last drive of that game were driving. Got the ball to about midfield, 50-yard line. They had to take Phillip Rivers out of the game, insert his backup, Jacoby Brissett, to throw the Hail Mary. Phillip Rivers couldn't get it to the end zone. Think about Drew Brees, who also retired in 2020. Drew Brees hit the wall in New Orleans. In his final NFL game against Tom's Buccaneers, he threw 4 interceptions. Like he was not good. He lost all arm strength that he ever had. Look at Big Ben Roethlisberger. Oh my gosh, he was awful this year when he retired. He was below average in every major quarterback statistical category. Many argued he was holding back the Steelers, who had a great defense and good skill position players and a good offensive line, a good running back, and a great coach in Mike Tomlin. Tom Brady retired at 44. And all of us think he could have gone another 2 or 3 years. All of us. Yeah, we're sad because Tom retired and everything, but it's one thing if it's in the Peyton Manning or the Drew Brees fashion where it's for sentimental sake. We grew up with them. We watched them every Sunday. But deep down we knew it was time. They played out their careers. They had won their championships. They had broken their records. They'd had their individual successes and team successes. It was time. We were sad to see them go, but it was time. Tom, we're like, you're still like a top 3 quarterback, Tom. Like, you're going to finish top 2 for MVP. At 44 years old, Tom Brady is going to finish in the top 2 for MVP. I argued all season long he should win it. It's probably going to go to Aaron Rodgers, but he's going to finish top 2 for most valuable player. So when you tell the story of Tom Brady, and it's a lengthy one, there's so many variables that come into play. 199th pick. Matter of fact, he's got a production company called 199 Productions. It was the fact that he always stayed motivated. And that, my friends, is hard when you reach that level. GOAT level. There's, oh, okay, he's good. Oh, man, he's really good. Oh, he's great. Oh yeah, he may be the best we've ever seen do this. He may be the best we've ever seen do this. Ever. He's the best football player of all time. Stayed motivated throughout. Took incredible care of his body. Watched Lord knows how many hours of film. He even said in an interview after he won his 6th Super Bowl title, he did an interview with Good Morning America and Michael Strahan at Disney World. And Michael Strahan asked him, what do you think when people call you the GOAT? Tom said, I cringe. I don't like it. Does Tom know deep down he's the GOAT? Yeah, he knows. But at the end of the day, he's like, I need fuel. I don't need compliments. I need fuel. What? Tell me I can't do this. Tell me I can't do this or this or this. May I remind you, the media dubbed him finished in 2014. He retired in early 2022, finishing in the top 2 for most valuable player. So in regards to the GOATs, my view, he is the GOAT of GOATs. I put him above all the previous athletes I mentioned. Gretzky, Jordan, Serena, Phelps, Ali. Give me Thomas, Edward, Patrick, Brady Jr. above all of them. Got a few comments here. Maxed Up Podcast is in the comments. He said, "What's up, my man?" Woo, no, Brady. So I take it, Maxed Up Podcast, that you are excited that Tom Brady is retired. Which look, at the end of the day, you look at, especially fans of the AFC East. God bless them, man. Jets fans, Bills fans, and who else in the division? I'm forgetting. Oh my gosh. Jets fans, Bills fans, Dolphins fans. That's what I'm forgetting. Listen, they had to suffer. I mean, the Bills went 3-33 against Tom Brady. Think about that. The Bills, in 36 games against Tom Brady, won 3. And look, up until 3 years ago, Buffalo just flat out sucked. Come on, man. 3? Let me do some quick math. Right, I got to see what the winning percentage for that is. That's awful. Let's see. That's an 8%. 8. They won 8% of the games they played against Tom Brady. By the way, another stat I saw on Tom that I thought was kind of funny. So, in my view, Tom's the greatest football player ever. I put Jerry Rice second, Lawrence Taylor third. But it's funny, Jerry Rice, who's nobody argues the greatest receiver ever. He's got every receiving record by a mile. And someone put out this stat, the all-time NFL receiving leaders in their 40s. Jerry Rice has the most receiving yards in NFL history in his 40s at 2,169 yards. Tom Brady is second on that list with 6 yards. He has 6 yards receiving. So that's interesting. But also something else. Can I mention this before I get your next comment, Maxed Up Podcast? Can I mention this? Tom Brady just finished, with his retirement, his 3rd Hall of Fame career. Seriously, if you divide Tom Brady's career into 3 pieces, he's a Hall of Famer in all 3. I mean, you look at his numbers, okay? The first part of his career, he won from 2000 to 2006. He won 3 Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowl MVPs. His playoff record was 12-2. He was first in playoff touchdown passes and second in playoff passing yards. That's a Hall of Famer. 3 Super Bowls, 2 MVPs. That's a Hall of Famer. Any way you slice it, that's a Hall of Famer. Okay, the second part of his career, from 2007 to 2013, he didn't win any Super Bowls in that stretch, but he won 2 regular season MVPs. He was first in playoff touchdown passes and first in playoff passing yards. Also, one of the years that he got back to the Super Bowl and came up short against the New York Football Giants, he led the Patriots into that game with an 18-0 record. So Tom Brady, despite lack of championships, those are Hall of Fame numbers. 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowl appearances. I think first in all these playoff statistics, that's a Hall of Famer. And then the third part of his career, which incredibly is the best part of his career. I remember I read a stat this season that Tom Brady has threw more touchdown passes in his 40s than his 20s. Think about that. More touchdown passes in his 40s than his 20s. And he retired at 44. Okay, he was drafted. Tom was born in what year? 1977, okay? So he came in the NFL. His first training camp, he was 23 years old. So from 23 to 29, he threw fewer touchdown passes This is ridiculous. Than when he was age 40 to 44. Just put that in perspective. But the last part of his career is the best part of his career. 2014 to 2021. 4 Super Bowl titles. 3 Super Bowl MVPs, 1 regular season MVP at the age of 40 in 2017. First in playoff touchdown passes, first by a mile in playoff passing yards. And in the playoffs, his record in that span was 16-3. Another stat. Tom Brady by himself has more Super Bowl titles than any NFL franchise. The Patriots, because of Tom, have 6 titles. And then the Steelers, one of the great organizations in the history of sports, they have 6 titles. Tom has 7. There's a million numbers we could throw out to discuss this man's greatness. You know, another one, and this doesn't feel good for me, but Tom Brady as a Buck, 2 years. He was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for 2 years. This hurts. Won more playoff games than the Dallas Cowboys have won in the last 26 years. Dang. All right, Masked Up Podcast has another comment. He says, Kyle Shanahan was coach, lost 28-3, has the biggest blown leads as a coach from Super Bowl to 2 playoff games. Good old Shanahan. Listen, man, I love Kyle Shanahan. That's, to me, I've said Kyle Shanahan is second as far as offensive coaches, in my opinion, to Andy Reid. I mean, the running schemes that this guy designs, man got Jimmy Garoppolo to the Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo. That's a heck of a coach. Now, he does have a tendency to blow fourth quarter leads, and he does deserve some blame, as you know, does Dan Quinn and Matt Ryan, and to a certain degree, even Devontae Freeman. Remember, in that Super Bowl collapse against the Patriots, Devontae Freeman badly missed Dante Hightower on a run block, and Hightower forced the Matt Ryan fumble that totally turned that game around. But yeah, I mean, he does deserve blame for that Super Bowl. But I mean, let's be real. What other quarterbacks pulling that off? Seriously. You got to keep in mind, it's not like they're down 28-3 in the first half. It's not like Brady's throwing a million interceptions and the defense can't get off the field or they're put in bad positions. No, the score was 28-3 Atlanta with 2 minutes left in the third quarter. So there's 17 minutes left in the game. That's it. So 1 quarter and 2 minutes left in the game. And the Patriots scored 25 unanswered to force overtime. And of course, 6 in overtime to win it. So, look, if you're asking me, I'm devastated. Personally, I'm devastated that Tom's retiring. I saw the news on Tuesday, and because of the reports that had come in on Saturday, and I know Tom Brady Sr. and Tom's agent, and even I think Tom's company, TB12, all denied the reports of him retiring, saying he's not even close to a decision yet. And Tom reportedly called Jason Light, the Buccaneers general manager, to say, hey, I haven't made a decision yet. But 3 days later, when the news comes out, or heck, the news didn't come out, Tom announced it. It was like, yeah, I'm not overly surprised. Because when you think about it, Tom, after the Bucs lost to the Rams in heartbreaking fashion too, I mean, you're down 27-3, you come back and tie it, and I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, Tampa Bay's going to win this game. They're going to win this game. And of course, again, as I mentioned earlier, Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, major props to them for how they played in that final drive. They connect on 2 passes, and Matt Gay made the game-winning field goal to win it for LA. But after a loss like that, say that loss came in like 2015. I don't know, 2015. Say the Patriots were down 27-3, came back and tied it, but lost the game in the end. Do you think Tom Brady comes out the next day and says, I'm satisfied, or I'll think about my future? No, Tom's like, bleep this. I'm coming back. Let's run this thing back. I hope we see y'all again in the future. We're going to kick y'all's behinds, right? But Tom, if this game is like, I'll think about it. I'll see what I want to do. And to that point, I never thought Tom may actually retire. Like he I think he's kind of considering it, if not favoring it, which of course he did. But, you know, I compared it to last year when the Bucs won the Super Bowl over Kansas City, and Tom's up on the podium. victorious, holding the Lombardi Trophy for the 7th time. And the great Jim Nantz of CBS is up on the podium, and he's interviewing Tom because he's won the Super Bowl MVP. And Jim Nantz asks him, he says, "You coming back for more football?" And Brady said, oh yeah, we're coming back. That was his exact quote. "Oh, yeah, we're coming back." And Jim Nantz was like, "There you go. Tom Brady's coming back." Like, it wasn't even like Tom didn't hesitate. Like, yeah, of course I'm coming back. What are you talking about? This go round, it was, I don't know. So maybe that should have been a giveaway sign for all of us to be like, yeah, Tom, yeah, maybe he's not fully committed. And if Tom's not going to be fully committed, then he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. So I think it speaks to Tom's character, in my opinion. He said, "I'm not going to half this. If I'm going to play football in 2022, I got to be all the way here, physically, mentally, emotionally." The reality for Tom is, I think he was physically. I mean, Tom didn't have any serious injuries this year. Crap, 2020, he played with a torn MCL, reportedly. So physically, I think Tom was fine. He had his bumps and bruises, but that's football. It happens. But I think mentally, he's like, and he even brought up Kobe Bryant. He said, "Look, I'm 44, got kids, my wife." Yeah, I brought up this past Friday that from Giselle's perspective, she's like, hey, Tom, I was kind of the Tom Brady of modeling, and I stepped away to raise the family so you could focus fully on your football career. So I think that fact, Tom's like, she left her career so I could succeed. Like, I want to spend time with her. I want to spend time with my kids. Yeah, I think Tom's oldest son is like 14 years old. He's about to go into high school. So, major respect to Tom Brady for doing this. I think this was ultimately a decision for his family. I think it was. I think he's like, I want to be around them more. Because from August to, in most cases with Tom Brady, February, it's football, some family sprinkled in there, but mostly football. That's what it is. Yeah, March and April and a little bit of May, depending on when OTAs are, and then a little bit in June. I want the whole year round. I want to focus on my business. I think Tom is investing in cryptocurrency and NFTs, and he's got a lot going on business-wise. He's got his new clothing brand. So Tom's going to be successful in his second career. There is no question about that. Given his commitment, his drive, I will say this, though. I don't think this is even arguable. This upcoming 2022 football season is going to be the hardest of Tom Brady's life. Because do I think he's at peace with his decision? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think he's also going to watch these games and thinking, I'm better than him. And dang, I could have made that throw. Listen, it's human nature. That's going to factor in. But I think as the years go on, that's not going to be a case. But Tom being the competitor he is, that's just going to come into play. That's just naturally gonna that's just naturally going to be his thing. So, but hats off to the great Tom Brady, the greatest athlete in the history of American team sports. Or as I dubbed him on today's show, maybe this will be my new nickname for him, the GOAT of GOATs. I had another nickname for him, the Great Outlier. Like when people talk about, oh my God, my quarterback's like, if you're a fan of a team that has an older quarterback, like, man, Tom Brady's doing that. I'm like, stop. Tom Brady's a great outlier. He doesn't make sense. He's a cyborg. That's another nickname I used for him this season. He's a cyborg. I don't know what's going on. Like, don't even compare your guy to him. Don't even do it. The GOAT of GOATs. That's going to be my new nickname for Tom Brady. And by the way, Canton, Ohio, obviously Tom's the most obvious Hall of Famer ever. Don't even, like, apparently, I remember talking about the show last summer that, I don't know, it was last summer, last spring, whenever it was that I saw this, that the Hall of Fame voting committee, when they got to Peyton Manning, because it was Peyton's first year of being eligible for the Hall of Fame, when they got to Peyton Manning, they spent a grand total of 13 seconds debating whether he was a Hall of Famer. It's like, I think 13 seconds is too long. It's like, duh, of course he's a Hall of Famer. Like, just abolish, just for Tom Brady, just abolish the 5-year waiting period. Like, just go and put him in Canton this year with whatever the Hall of Fame class is going to be. I think DeMarcus Ware is in this class. Who else? I'm trying to think of some other players. Is Vince Wilfork in this class? He may make it. There's some good players, some great players, the Hall of Fame, for crying out loud. But just go and put Tom Brady in with this class and just let that be that. Just get rid of the 5-year rule, just an exception for him. If you want to induct him next year, that's fine with me too. But like, he shouldn't have to wait 5 years. Like, he's getting inducted in Canton, Ohio, and that's that. Like, just build a whole exhibit for Tom Brady at the Hall of Fame. Which, by the way, I would love to go to the Hall of Fame. That is, I mean, it's the greatest football museum in the world, literally. And safe to say, Tom Brady's going to be there one day. His bus is going to be in Canton. Let's see. John just said, well, one poop emoji didn't vote for Cheater. Yeah, who didn't vote for Derek Jeter, man? Come on. But what do we talk about, though, John, with baseball writers for the Hall of Fame? They are the most rigid group of people that I've ever seen in sports. Just the baseball purist in general, like not just purists, but just like stuck in their ways, hypocritical. But, you know, Mariano Rivera is the only unanimous Hall of Famer in baseball history, which, yeah, I wasn't surprised Mariano Rivera was unanimous. I'd have voted him in on the first ballot, even as a Red Sox fan. But, you know, when they said he's the only one, I'm like, so like Ken Griffey was unanimous, and like you mentioned, John, like Derek Jeter wasn't unanimous. Are you kidding me? This is a joke. So I think there's some guys it's like, let's put them in the Hall of Fame, guys. Come on. But I think it's safe to say, John, who if anyone doesn't vote for Tom Brady for the Hall of Fame, they should be kicked out the committee. Just kick them out. They don't belong there. And John just is outdated talking about the baseball Hall of Fame writers. And the good thing is, NFL Hall of Fame writers aren't that way for the most part. They had the issue with T.O. You know, he didn't get in the Hall of Fame his first 2 tries, despite statistically absolutely being a first ballot Hall of Famer. But the writers had beef with T.O. and they didn't like T.O. But at least he did get in. At least he didn't have to wait like 15 years. Like, you know, he should have gotten in the first try, but 3 years isn't horribly long either. But there you go. The longest segment, I believe, I think, in the history of carving it up. But it deserved it. It's Tom Brady. Come on. I just, you know, but, you know, ESPN put out that graphic of the 6 quarterbacks, kind of the previous generation. Brady, the 2 Mannings, Peyton and Eli, Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, and Big Ben. Like, kind of like that generation of quarterbacks. They've all retired now. It's like, well, there goes my football childhood. That's all my guys right there. They're all retired, and I'm sad. I'm sad. Now, look, the game could be in better hands. You got Patrick Mahomes. You've got Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. And you've got guys like, I still think Trevor Lawrence is going to be amazing. I think Trey Lance is going to be spectacular. Love him. You know, so we've still got superstar quarterbacks. We got, you know, we got Dak. We got young quarterbacks that are going to be really good. And John just got the crying emoji about the previous generation of quarterbacks. It's sad, man. I hate it. Grady Edwards, my man, Patriots fan. He says, hopefully they won't have that issue when Julian Edelman comes up. I got to admit, Grady, I darn sure don't think Julian Edelman's a first ballot Hall of Famer. If you want to put him in the Hall of Fame, I won't be mad. But the guy didn't even make a Pro Bowl. Like, you can argue Edelman along with like Wes Welker, another Tom Brady receiver. Like, they're like arguably the 2 greatest slot receivers of all time. But again, it's now Edelman won a Super Bowl MVP in Super Bowl 53 that went over the Rams. But I don't know, man. Edelman, that's a tough one, man. Like, is it Skip Bayless that said, and you know, Skip says some crazy things sometimes, but is it him that says, if I have to think twice about whether you're a Hall of Famer or not, then you shouldn't be a Hall of Famer? Like, the Hall of Fame should be like reserved for the obvious guys, the Bradys, the Mannings, the Marinos, the Ray Lewises, the Reggie Whites, like the obvious ones, Jim Brown. So I don't know. Yeah, there you go. John has got a good comparison there. Steve Kerr, John Paxton. Now, neither Kerr or Paxton were finals MVPs with Michael Jordan. That's different. Like, at least, I don't think anybody thinks Welker's a Hall of Famer. Edelman, the argument for him would be, hey, he's one of the greatest playoff receivers of all time. He won a Super Bowl MVP. But I would counter with, does he get that without Brady? Now you say, well, wide receiver's a dependent position. True. I mean, someone's got to throw Edelman the ball, but he's got that guy. He's got that guy throwing the ball. It's not to minimize Julian Edelman, but he was a 7th-round pick. Okay, he was a quarterback at Kent State. Like, receiver wasn't even his natural position, and Tom turned him into, a really good player. So, Grady says if Welker had Edelman's resume, he would definitely be a Hall of Famer. Yeah, you could argue that. And that's the tough thing for Wes. And I definitely take Edelman over Wes Welker, even as good as Wes was. But, that drop in the Super Bowl against the Giants is going to be, remembered forever, unfortunately, postseason wise, Grady says. But that's the thing. Like, Tom, I mean, who's Deion Branch? No disrespect to Deion Branch, but who is that? Tom turned him into a Super Bowl MVP. I mean, he had some good, obviously he had Gronk, right? Gronk's one of the 3 or 4 greatest tight ends to ever play, okay? He had him. He had Randy Moss, in my opinion, the 3rd greatest receiver of all time behind Jerry Rice and T.O. Moss, which he had for like 2 minutes, and Gronk. What elite skill position player did Tom Brady have? I don't think Edelman's. I think Edelman was really good. I wouldn't call him elite. Like, Justin Jefferson's elite, and Julio in his prime was elite, and Calvin Johnson in his prime elite. I'm sorry, I can't put Edelman in that category. But that's also what I respect as well about Tom is nobody has ever galvanized locker rooms better than him. I mean, for real. No one's ever done it as well as he has because, you hear all these former Patriots players, they'd walk into their first training camp and here come this corny looking 6'4" guy, not the most physically intimidating dude in the world. That big smile, come up, put his hand out and shake your hand and say, my name is Tom Brady. It's nice to meet you. And the rookie's like, yeah, duh, I know you're Tom Brady. Okay, I know. But that's what he did. I mean, he wasn't somebody, Aaron Rodgers, who, shunned teammates or didn't talk to teammates. Like, Tom played 22 years. Name one of his former teammates that were like, yeah, man, I couldn't stand Tom. Like, I didn't like Tom all that much. I thought he's kind of a pretty boy and he's overhyped by the media. No, they loved him. I mean, there were some guys. I remember James Harrison, the former great pass rusher with the Pittsburgh Steelers. His last hurrah in the NFL was with the Patriots. The Steelers released him, and he signed with the Patriots in 2017. And James Harrison, having played against Tom Brady for years, was kind of, I don't know. Is he the real deal? He came out of the experience. He's like, yeah, he's the real deal. Love him. Love Tom. Love the guy. Teammates loved him. I'm telling you, that matters. Grady answered my question about what great skill position player did Tom have. And Grady says Antonio Brown. That doesn't count. That does not count. Because AB wasn't Pittsburgh AB. And, Lord knows what Oakland AB could have been had it not been for some cuckoo crazy things that were going on there. But no, that was not like prime AB. That was run off the field, shirtless AB. That wasn't like Pittsburgh Steelers Antonio Brown. That does not count. But there you go. I mean, it's one of the great careers in the history of sports, and it's one of. My dad just texted me. I think my dad's watching. He said Antonio Brown badmouthed him. Yeah. They're okay. There you go. Antonio Brown is the first teammate to badmouth him. That's a good point. Appreciate that, Dad. Antonio Brown is the first former Tom Brady teammate to talk trash about Tom. But it's Antonio Brown. He talks trash about everybody. He didn't like anybody. So he don't count. He don't count. He was there for like 5 minutes in Tampa Bay. Grady says it was in reference to whoever they had to say anything negative. It was in reference to whoever had to say anything negative about him. LOL. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Good point. But yeah, it's tell you, man, historic era is coming to an end. It's tough pill for me to swallow, man. It really is. I mean, think about it too. From Super Bowl 49 to Super Bowl 55, every other year, Tom Brady won the Super Bowl. He won in 49 against Seattle, 51 against Atlanta, 53 against the Rams, and then 55 against the Chiefs. Like every other year, he won it. Again, he's the last quarterback to lead a team to back-to-back titles. So, hasn't been done in almost 20 years now. So, it's not going to be done this year because Tampa's not going to win it. So, I don't know. Are the Rams or Bengals, whoever wins on Sunday? But John brings up a good question. Who replaces him? Well, you're not going to replace Tom Brady. You're going to have great players. You're going to have Mahomes and Allen and Burrow and these young guns, but you're not going to replace Tom. But if you want to say like the best quarterback in the league, look, I've said Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. Considering what Burrow did with as limited a roster as he has, and I'll kind of dive into this more next week as we lead up to the Super Bowl. You could say Burrow. I don't think that's being prisoned in the moment. What he's done in his first full year as an NFL starting quarterback, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So, credit to him. But oh my gosh, my dad just texted me Mac Jones. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. My dad's a big Mac Jones guy. We've had our battles about Michael McCorkle Jones. No, Dad. Mac Jones is not going to replace Tom Brady. I mean, he technically replaced him in New England, but no. Josh Smith is in the comments here. I know this doesn't have anything to do with the Chiefs, but I was listening to a Chiefs podcast, and it said the Chiefs might have $74 million in the cap. Wow, that is part of that's the Mahomes. I mean, they have given a lot of money to their key players, Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Excuse me. Chris Jones. Who else they paid? I think that's it. But that comes with winning the Super Bowl. That's the unfortunate part of it. John just says, in Tampa, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a candidate. I really do. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo's a guy, if you put the perfect pieces around him, he can go to a Super Bowl. He proved that 2 years ago. Now, if you hand the game to Jimmy and say, take us there, Jimmy's not that guy. Would they try to make a deal for Russell Wilson? I doubt Seattle would trade him to Tampa. I doubt that. But listen, the Bucs are going to go into like a semi-rebuild. I still think Tampa can win their division. The NFC South is awful right now, especially now that Sean Payton's left and Tom's retired. So, I don't know. We'll see. But I think Garoppolo's a candidate. Grady says that ESPN graphic of quarterbacks, does Aaron Rodgers fit into that graphic? He was drafted in 2005. Yeah, I mean, if he retires like this year or next year, I think you could throw him into that. Absolutely. I think they were talking about the retired guys. You could throw Aaron in that graphic, absolutely, given his success, given the fact that he's probably about to win his 4th MVP. He's got a ring. So, I don't know. It depends. I predicted after the loss to San Francisco, I wouldn't be shocked if he retired at all, the way he was talking. But that would be tough after Tom Brady, especially. Grady says, what about Kyle Trask? They drafted in the 2nd round last year. I'm not that big on Kyle Trask, and it's not just because I'm a Vols fan and he played at Florida. He's a little, not stationary, but a little bit of a statue in the pocket. Doesn't have a massive arm. The guy did have Kyle Pitts in college. That helps a little bit. And Dan Mullen, who don't know why that guy got fired. But Kyle Trask is good. I like him. I think he's going to be a career backup quarterback. And that's not a shot. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think he's like a true replacement to Tom. Maybe if they brought in a Jimmy Garoppolo, they could have like a quarterback competition. Because I don't think if you bring in a guy like Jimmy G, that it's going to be, okay, you're our guy. Like he probably would compete with Kyle Trask. I wouldn't be against that. I think Bruce Arians would be all for it. John just says that Kyle Trask sounds too close to trash. LOL, respectfully. And I'd feel terrible for Kyle. I mean, you want to place him? You really want to place? I mean, who's going to replace Howard Stern one day, and who's going to replace who replaced Michael Jordan? Well, nobody did for years until LeBron came into the league. It took somebody of LeBron's caliber to truly sort of assume that throne as I'm the man. Okay, I'm the face of a league. So I mean, that is a tough follow-up act. Like, that's brutal, without a question. Okay, so almost an hour of Tom Brady talk. I'll get any more Tom Brady comments later in the show once I get to this topic. So we got some pretty darn earth-shattering news in the National Football League on Tuesday after Tom Brady announced his retirement that morning. So Brian Flores, the now former head coach of the Miami Dolphins, filed a lawsuit against the National Football League, as well as his former employer, the Miami Dolphins, the Denver Broncos, and the New York Giants. There is a lot to unpack with this. So, and he's filing a suit against them for racial discrimination in regards to the head coach hiring process. And so thus far, we've had, I believe, 4 head coaches hired, I think. Matt Eberflus, Nathaniel Hackett, Brian Dable, and then I think another guy, I forgot his name, is about to get the job in Minnesota. So thus far, out of like 8 openings, we've had 4 or 5 head coaches hired, and none of them have been minorities. And of course, the Rooney Rule has come into question. I've said on the show, the intentions of the Rooney Rule are good. They're in good faith. They're good spirited by the late great Dan Rooney. But it doesn't work. I saw a stat the other day that, and I'll get into the Flores thing in just a second, but I just want to throw this out there. Since the Rooney Rule came into play, and for those of you that don't know, by the way, the Rooney Rule is that you have to interview at least one minority candidate when you're looking for a coach. Like that's the Rooney Rule. And so since it came into effect in 2003, 129 head coaches have been hired since. 15 have been African American. 12%. Like, it just doesn't work. And by the way, I've had my issues with the commissioner of the NFL, Roger Goodell. This isn't a Roger Goodell problem. Okay, a lot of people got mad when Colin Kaepernick was a free agent. Like, Roger Goodell, make these, and Goodell probably could have done a better job conveying the message on Kaepernick and everything. But Goodell, make these owners sign Kaepernick. He can't do that. Like, he can't tell an owner to sign Colin Kaepernick. He can't tell an owner to to hire a black head coach. Excuse me. That's not within his power. And by the way, you look at the NFL office, the NFL front offices, it's incredibly diverse. There's white people, there's black people, there's women. It's people of all different backgrounds. You got Troy Vincent, who I believe is the vice president. So you've got a number of people in the NFL offices that are all from different backgrounds. So when you look at the owners in the NFL, the issue is them. They're the problems. They're not giving the right guys opportunities, which I'll get to throughout this topic. But let's talk about Brian Flores. So he's sued 3 teams. So let's start first with the Miami Dolphins, his former team. And this one, man, could be, oh Lord, what could come out of this? Okay, so it's, by the way, it's a 58-page lawsuit filed in Manhattan on Tuesday. And he claimed that in that lawsuit, he claimed that Dolphins owner Stephen Ross offered him $100,000 for every loss that occurred during the 2019 NFL season. 2019 was Brian Flores' first season as the Dolphins head coach. And the owner, Stephen Ross, according to Flores, said, "Hey, I'll pay $100,000 for every game that we lose." So he is telling the coach, lose. Coach to lose. Which, what's the old saying? Organizations tank. Players and coaches don't. Coaches like, I got to keep my job. I don't want to intentionally lose. What are you talking about? Players like, I got a family to feed. I'm not going to intentionally drop passes or throw interceptions or miss tackles. I'm not going to do that. Stephen Ross apparently didn't get that message, according to Coach Flores. So if this ends up being true, oh my goodness. Stephen Ross should be removed from the National Football League in terms of owning an NFL franchise. That simple. Because if it comes out, by the way, Hugh Jackson, former NFL coach, coached with the Cleveland Browns from 2016 to 2018 when he was fired midseason. Hugh Jackson came out and said, Coach Flores, Browns also paid me to lose games. And so there could be a real issue here in regards to the owners and whether they paid the coaches or offered to pay the coaches for throwing games, basically, for throwing games, which is an insult to the integrity of competition. And that's what it is. And so you have that in Miami. Then you have in Denver. So Brian Flores is trying to become a head coach in the 2019 NFL hiring cycle earlier in that calendar year, 2019. And he interviews with the Denver Broncos. And according to Flores, again, these are allegations, so that's what they are. Brian Flores alleges that the Broncos showed up an hour late to the interview, looking disheveled, maybe a bit drunk. And so he's saying, yeah, they were ready. Like, they didn't treat me in a professional manner. I'm here to get a job, and don't know what they're doing. And then the one that to me, is the most obvious. Like, this one, I'd be like, what is there to investigate? He's got like actual evidence of this one, like full right there evidence. A text exchange with Bill Belichick. So Bill Belichick texted Brian Flores, quote, "Sounds like you have landed. Congrats." Flores responded, "Did you hear something I didn't?" Belichick responded, "Giants?" Flores, "I interview on Thursday. I think I have a shot at it." Belichick, "Got it. I hear from Buffalo and NYG that you are their guy. Hope it works out if you want it to." Flores, "That's definitely what I want. I hope you're right, coach. Thank you." He then sent another text. Coach Flores sent another text to Bill Belichick. "Coach, are you talking to Brian Flores or Brian Dable? Just making sure." This is where it gets real interesting. Belichick responded, "Sorry, I effed this up. I double-checked and misread the text naming Dable. Sorry about that. BB, Bill Belichick." And Brian Flores responded, "Thanks, Bill." So, first of all, Bill Belichick's not good at texting. I mean, the Belichick's not good at texting, which, you don't look at him, you're like, tech savvy. No offense, but you don't think that with Bill Belichick. But in all seriousness. So basically, the New York Football Giants, who, may I remind you, in their nearly 100-year history, have never hired an African-American head coach. Never. They had already predetermined, at least according to these text messages, that's about as, that's pretty good evidence, right? They predetermined Dable's our guy. By the way, I have nothing against Dable, right? Because, Dable comes from the Belichick coaching tree. I've said for a year, Brian Dable needs to be a head coach in the NFL. Nothing against him. This is not an attack on Brian Dable in the slightest. Okay, I think he's going to do a solid job with the Giants. But on the Giants side of it, the Tisch family, the Mara family, who owns the team, who owns the organization. Brian Flores was y'all's Rooney Rule interview. You brought him there because the rules state you have to. Not because, let's give him a shot. Let's see. Let's see what he's got. Maybe he can be our next head coach. I mean, we have been garbage for 5 years. Worst record, by the way. You know what the New York Giants are since 2017? They got the worst record in football. Since 2017, they got the worst record in football. By the way, in that stretch, At no point in any of the last 5 seasons had the New York Football Giants had a winning record. But they're not even going to give Brian Daboll a shot because they've already predetermined who their guy is. Brian Flores, who, as I detailed a few weeks ago when he was fired, and I was about as outraged as I'm sure many of you were when he was fired, as I came out in the show and said, 3 seasons in Miami, he had 3 quarterbacks that started games for him. 3 quarterbacks who started a grand total of 49 games. The quarterbacks' names are Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's played on like 20 teams. Not exactly that many, but he's playing a lot of teams. Jacoby Brissett, who's a career backup. And Tua Tagovailoa, who, let's face it, is a bust. He's not in the same galaxy as Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow. Brian Flores started 0-7 his first year with the Dolphins, and they got just crushed in a lot of those games. And then they started to pick up some momentum. As a matter of fact, the last game of the Dolphins season that year, they beat Tom Brady and the Patriots. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And guess what? Knocked the Patriots out of a first-round bye, and the Patriots ended up, as I mentioned with the Brady topic earlier, losing to the Tennessee Titans in the first round. So the Dolphins finished 5-11, but they got momentum at the end of the season. They got something they could build off of, right? They're a rebuilding franchise. You need to take something good into the following season. 2020 with, again, Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua Tagovailoa. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. One guy starting, then Tua comes in, and then he's getting benched for Fitzpatrick, but Tua's still starting. Then Fitzpatrick starts, and then Fitzpatrick gets hurt, and Tua's starting. And Brian Flores won double-digit games. He went 10-6 and almost made the playoffs with that at quarterback. May I remind everybody out there that one of these Super Bowl head coaches, Zach Taylor, you know what his record was going into this season, his head coaching record? One of those seasons, by the way, with Joe Burrow. 6-25-1. 6 wins, 25 losses, 1 tie. 2021 rolls around. The Dolphins got off to a pretty bad start, 1-7. But guess what? They won 8 of their last 9 games to finish with a winning record. Something the Miami Dolphins have not been able to say. Consecutive winning seasons. They have not been able to say that since 2003. Yet Brian Flores got the boot. With nothing at quarterback. He nearly made the playoffs the last 2 seasons. In the same division, by the way, with Josh Allen, who is spectacular, in case you haven't noticed. In the same division, coaching against Bill Belichick. By the way, you want to know what Brian Flores' record is against Belichick? 4-2. It's 4-2 against Bill Belichick. One of those wins came when Tom Brady was still in Foxborough. Yet he gets fired. Explain that one to me. Think about other black coaches. I gave this example recently as well. Think about Jim Caldwell. Okay. Jim Caldwell coached in a Super Bowl with the Indianapolis Colts. He replaced Tony Dungy and coached in a Super Bowl with the Colts. But you say, yeah, Peyton Manning. Okay, that's fair. All right, Peyton's amazing. Okay, I'll give you that. But he gets hired by the Detroit Lions going to the 2014 season. The Lions go 11-5, make the playoffs, and as a Cowboy fan, I can say they got screwed in that game. They should have beaten the Dallas Cowboys in that playoff game in Arlington, Texas. The following season, disappointing year, 7-9. 2016, this is not to take a shot at Matthew Stafford. The guy came apart in the second half of the season. They still made the playoffs with a 9-7 record. The following season, almost made the playoffs again with a 9-7 record. So, Jim Caldwell, in 4 seasons as the Lions head coach, because he was fired after 2017 for not sure what reason, but sure Detroit, being the well-run organization that they are, not sure they had their reasons. Jim Caldwell won 36 games in 4 seasons. You want to know how many games that Lions coaches have won since then? In the last 4 seasons, 2018 to 2021. Jim Caldwell won 36 games in 4 seasons. Other Lions coaches since, in the 4 years after that, 17. They couldn't even get half of what Jim Caldwell got. Yet Jim Caldwell is the poster child for Rooney Rule interviews. Every hiring cycle, Bears interview Jim Caldwell, or this team interviews Jim Caldwell. And every time I'm like, I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when I see it. He's not getting hired. Why? Come to your own conclusion on that. But the man can coach football. He made the playoffs twice with the Detroit Lions. And the only interviews he's getting is Rooney Rule interviews. Think about Eric Bieniemy. Right? Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. And look, Coach Bieniemy deserves some blame after the Chiefs' collapse against the Bengals this past Sunday. I put the majority of the blame on Patrick Mahomes because if he gets the majority of the credit when they win, then he should also get the majority of the credit when they lose because he played bad in that second half and overtime. He did. By his MVP standards, he was bad. Point is, Eric Bieniemy has this is not a rhetorical question. Has he gotten an interview yet for head coach? Has somebody in the comments, please. Has he gotten one? I don't think he has. And people say, well, but Eric Bieniemy doesn't call play, which like Andy Reid says that Eric Bieniemy calls plays. I don't know who to believe. That's irrelevant to this because people say, well, Eric Bieniemy doesn't call the plays. Let's just say that's true because it very well could be true. Doug Peterson didn't call plays in Kansas City under Andy Reid. He got the Eagles job. Matt Nagy didn't call plays in Kansas City as the offensive coordinator. He got the Bears job. Eric Bieniemy doesn't call plays for Andy Reid, we think. But he can't get an interview? Really? So I'm just saying. I don't know if all of the allegations made by Brian Flores are true. No idea. What I will say is I have a ton of respect for him in going after, because look, Coach Flores is 40 years old. He's a young guy, right? He's got wife, kids, and he said himself, I'm kind of putting a lot on the line here. I'm putting my coaching future on the line, and I love to coach. He said in a statement that God gave me an ability to coach football, and clearly that is the case. But he's saying, I'm fighting so that other coaches aren't put in the same position that I am. And to that, hats off to Coach Flores. By the way, think about the Dallas Cowboys for a second. Think about the Cowboys. Their current head coach, Mike McCarthy, who obviously I've ripped on the show. A lot of people have ripped on their shows. You, the fans, have ripped, to fellow Cowboy fans and the non-Cowboys fans in the comment section here, or you called into radio shows. I don't think anybody who roots for the Cowboys, anybody who even doesn't like the Cowboys, can say that Mike McCarthy's done a very good job. You want to know how Mike McCarthy's interview process went in 2020? Jerry Jones invited him to his house. Okay, no problem with that. And apparently they ate nachos and talked ball until like 2 a.m. or whatever it was. And I think Mike McCarthy even spent the night at the Jones mansion. Jerry Jones Jr. reportedly told his dad, Dad, what are you waiting on? This is our guy. Right? He's Mr. Analytics. He watched every play of the 2019 Dallas Cowboys season. He can coach football. He is our guy. By the way, Jerry Jones only interviewed one candidate other than that. Shocker, shocker. His Rooney Rule interview, Marvin Lewis. Anyways, Mike McCarthy got the job. And proceeded to confess that, he didn't really go into analytics with the Cowboys.
You said you analyzed every play or watched every play of the entire 2019 season. What is it that you learned from that experience that you think will benefit you most here?
Well, I need to confess. I told Jerry I watched every play of the 2019 season, but I wanted the job. So I haven't watched every play of the season, but it was just, I mean, you do what you got to do, right?
You do what you got to do, huh? You think Marvin Lewis said that in his interview with the Cowboys? I'm not saying Marvin Lewis should have been the head coach of the Cowboys. Not implying that. But do you think the Cowboys were as thorough with Marvin Lewis? Heck, they weren't thorough with the guy they ended up hiring. How about Josh McDaniels, the hire that I cannot really figure out with the Raiders? It's nothing against Josh McDaniels personally. Got nothing against the man. But for the Raiders, I don't get the hire at all for a multitude of reasons that I talked about on Monday's show. You can go back and look at that to see what I said. But Josh McDaniels coached the Denver Broncos in 2010. And he was fired because it got found that he was recording other teams' practices. So he kind of shamefully got fired out of Denver. Brian Flores has a great resume, and Jim Caldwell has a great resume. And Marvin Lewis has a resume of getting the Bengals to the playoffs multiple years with Andy Dalton. But those guys can hardly get interviews. And so to Brian Flores' credit, he's saying, yeah, this isn't going to fly anymore. He even talked about Nate Burleson of CBS asked him, the great, Nate Burleson's was a good NFL player and is an even better broadcaster. He asked Brian Flores how he felt when he saw the text by Belichick, and he basically confirmed, yeah, I'm not the guy. He said, I was humiliated. I was upset. I was angry. You can understand that emotion from a guy who took over a pretty lousy situation in Miami and produced back-to-back winning seasons with a bag of Cheetos at quarterback. He wanted Justin Herbert, according to every report out of Miami. He wanted Justin Herbert with the 5th overall pick. They took Tua. Chargers took Herbert. They could say, well, the Chargers haven't made the playoffs with Herbert. You think it's Herbert's fault? Brandon Staley cost the Chargers a shot at the playoffs, but that's another discussion for another day. All I'm saying is this. The NFL's hiring process is, I would say broken, but that would imply that it's been fixed or been in a good spot. The Rooney Rule, for all its good intentions, it don't work. It don't work. Simple as that. And so the rules got to change. I don't know what. You can't make somebody hire someone. Someone ultimately what's got to happen is, in many circles, ownership's got to change. Simple as that. I even read a report that the Giants didn't want to hire Flores because Dable was the most qualified for the job. It's funny how the most qualified for the job, they all kind of look the same, if you know what I mean. But the Giants said, well, he's too emotional, or he's too much of a control freak, or he's too much of a disciplinarian. The best coaches that the Giants have had in the Super Bowl era were emotional control freaks who were disciplinarians. Bill Parcells and Tom Coughlin. So don't give me that excuse. Stop it. Come on, man. It is ridiculous. What is going on? So once again, hats off to Brian Flores. I wish him the absolute best. I hope he gets an opportunity to coach again, because that man can freaking coach football. That has been as clear as day in Miami. Because Tua ain't that dude. Hey, hate to tell y'all Dolphins fans, Tua ain't that dude. Brian Flores, he's got rid of the wrong guy. I'm telling you, man, if that's true about Stephen Ross. By the way, something else. Last thing, and I'll get to the comments. That something else that Brian Flores alleged about Stephen Ross was that after the end of the 2019 season, Mr. Ross began to pressure Mr. Flores. This is according to the suit. Mr. Ross began to pressure Mr. Flores to recruit a prominence quarterback in violation of league tampering rules. Mr. Flores repeatedly refused to comply with these improper directives. Undeterred, in the winter of 2020, Mr. Ross invited Mr. Flores onto a yacht for lunch. Shortly after he arrived, Mr. Ross told Mr. Flores that the prominent quarterback was conveniently arriving at the location. Obviously, Mr. Ross had attempted to set up a purposely impromptu meeting between Flores and the prominent quarterback. Mr. Flores refused the meeting and left the yacht immediately. After the incident, Mr. Flores was treated with disdain and held out as someone who is non-compliant and difficult to work with. By the way, the reports are that the quarterback was Tom Brady, which makes sense. It was the summer. It was the spring of 2020. Prominent quarterback, free agency. Hello, it's Tom Brady. By the way, again, that's the reports are saying, and it makes sense that would be who it is. So if that's true, I have an even greater amount of respect for Brian Flores, because man could have Tom freaking Brady and said, Mr. Ross, it's against the rules. We can't do this. It's as simple as that. So that's, man, I'm telling you, it is. This could, again, I've used this word multiple times during the show today. This could be earth-shattering for the National Football League. Earth-shattering. And again, I'm not like anti-Roger Goodell because of this. Roger Goodell, the league offices is pretty darn diverse. NFL coaching circles aren't exactly that. May I remind you guys, as my final point, the NFL has, in a league of 71% to be accurate, African-American players. They have one African-American head coach, Mike Tomlin, who in November, people were suggesting should go to college at USC and leave the Steelers. That's the issue we got in the NFL. To the comments now. Let's see. Okay. Grady says, I like Brian Flores. I really, really do. But as far as legal standing for racial discrimination, he doesn't really have that much to stand on in the court system. Unless there's something we don't know, there's definitely an issue during the hiring process with who the heck these guys want to hire. However, it isn't a sham interview if somebody interviews someone who already knows they're going to hire. That's how the real world works, where people have an idea of who they're going to hire, but still go forward with the interview anyways. You get the job off getting to know people and relationships. Is there any more? A lot of the times, you just do the interview because you don't know words. Can I get you, or where it can get you is what he meant to say. So before I get to your future comments, again, I think, Grady, that Flores was the only African-American head coach that the Giants interviewed. So is it crazy to say there's their Rooney Rule guy? Again, before they even interviewed, Belichick unknowingly basically revealed, yeah, Dable's already their guy. Again, I got nothing against Brian Dable. If they want to hire him at head coach, first of all, it's their decision, and I have no problem with it because I like Brian Dable. I think he's going to be a really good head coach. But to not even give Flores an opportunity? I mean, I think those texts are pretty darn as telling as any of the allegations are. Still, the hiring process really does need to change, and I know that's stating the obvious. And he says, Leftwich, Bowles, and Eric Bieniemy all deserve to be head coaches. Absolutely. Bowles and Bieniemy, again, I'm not against Leftwich getting a job. I think he can really, drop offensive plays. Bowles led the Jets to their last winning season in 2015. The Jets were on the doorstep of the playoffs with Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. They almost got in, and Todd Bowles did that. And so he absolutely deserves a head coaching job. Eric Bieniemy absolutely deserves at least, to get an opportunity at a head coaching job. Let's see. Grady says, I think Caldwell might be a little different because if I heard he has some health issues, Caldwell should be a coach, though, if he wants it. I'm not aware of any health issues. If that's the case, then obviously, he needs to take care of his health first. If that's not the case, I mean, this guy's not even getting an opportunity. Good point here as well, Grady. He says, Anthony Lynn only got 1 year with the Chargers with Herbert as a rookie. I bet he could have been a better head coach than Brandon Staley was this year. You're darn right. When they fired Anthony Lynn, I was like, I wasn't scratching my head the way I was with Flores. When I heard Flores got fired, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. When Anthony Lynn was fired, I was like, really? He got y'all the playoffs like 2 years ago. Like, they got hot at the end of the 2020 season. They won like 4 straight to end the regular season with Justin Herbert. Like, and Brandon Staley, let's be real, kind of blew a lot of those games for the Chargers this year. If you want to say that if you want to list the reasons the LA Chargers didn't make the playoffs, I think it's safe to say Brandon Staley's at the top of that list. And I agree with you. I think Anthony Lynn is an excellent head coach. I really do. And I haven't heard his name come up in these conversations. So again, there's a real process with the hiring system. And do I have answers? No. I don't know how you institute rules because, again, you can't force the owners on who to hire. So the issue is, as simplistic as this is, heart's got to change. And I don't think this is that simplistic. Some ownership groups need to change, right? Like the Denver Broncos are on sale right now. And I think I forgot the guy's name, but there's a black man who's wealthier than like 20 of the NFL owners, 20 of the 32 owners. So I would think that he would have enough money to purchase the Broncos. So diversity in ownership, obviously having being more open to candidates that don't look just like you. Right? If you interview a diverse group of candidates, white, black, Hispanic, Latino, women, if you interview them equally, determine who the best one is for the job, got no problem with it. I mean, if that person doesn't do a good job and that person doesn't do a good job, you hire the wrong person. But at the end of the day, if you hire who you think is best, like you truly from the bottom of your heart think is the best person to lead your football team, got no problem with that. Again, like I said, I don't have a problem with the Giants hiring Brian Daboll. I don't. I like Brian Daboll. I think he's going to be a really good head coach. I do have a problem with them really not giving Brian Flores any opportunity whatsoever. That's my issue. And again, I think he was the Rooney Rule interview. Let's see. Grady, no, first of all, no, I don't think it's a stupid suggestion, but he says this might be a stupid suggestion, but do you think getting rid of the Rooney Rule would be a good first step? It'd take out just interviewing the token black guy that this rule has become. Rule had good intentions, but it's just not working, to be honest. It's not. I think it's pretty simple. I listed the stat earlier. 129 head coaches have been hired since the Rooney Rule was instituted in 2003. 15 of them have been black. But like that's 12%. That doesn't work at all. And we talk about this every offseason. It seemed like the last 3 off seasons or so, every time we come up to this point, we're like, like one black coach got hired, and even though like a million of them got interviewed, and he didn't get the job, and wait, that guy got the job? He's not qualified. Every offseason. This one is going to be vastly different because one of the candidates is saying enough is enough. I guess the blame that goes in the NFL, if you want to assess blame to the NFL, is they need to change. A, they need to change the Rooney Rule, and B, get a new rule. I don't know how they're going to do that. Again, I really don't know how they're going to do that when you can't institute a rule that changes the hearts and minds of owners, unfortunately. So, but some big stuff may come out of this. Some big things. So it should be very interesting. But yeah, 2-topic show that took an hour and a half. I'm telling you, that's why I did 2 topics. There was a lot of things I was wanting to talk about today, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to hit the Tom Brady retirement and the Brian Flores lawsuit stories head on, give it my undivided attention, and just leave the other stuff for tomorrow's show. Before we go, though, got some, I guess, semi-breaking news. That's the All-Star reserves have been announced for the NBA. So from this according to Shams Charania, again, I'm not watching TNT. I think they announced these on TNT. So we know the All-Star starters in the Western Conference. It's Steph Curry, Ja Morant, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, and Andrew Wiggins. And so the All-Star reserves in the Western Conference are Devin Booker, Luka Doncic, Rudy Gobert, Draymond Green, Donovan Mitchell, Chris Paul, and Karl Anthony Towns. Okay, so there you go. So in the Western Conference, I'm trying really hard to think of any snubs. At the moment, I can't, off the top of my head, think of any all-star snubs. Obviously, Chris Paul and Devin Booker have to get in. I mean, come on, they got the best record in basketball. They've had a brilliant season. But also, according to Shams, Draymond Green announces he will not play in the All-Star game. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver will choose replacement. And Draymond has been dealing with a disc issue in his back, so that's not surprising at all. There's no point in risking him for an All-Star game. And in the Eastern Conference, the reserves are Jimmy Butler, Darius Garland, James Harden, Zach LaVine, Chris Middleton, Jason Tatum, and Fred VanVleet. How does Tyler Hero not get in? That is, wow. I cannot believe Tyler Hero did not make the All-Star game. That was like my comeback. That was like my comeback player of the year pick. What are we doing here? But Fred VanVleet getting in, absolutely. I've been a proponent of him getting in. Darius Garland, what a season he's had for the Cleveland Cavaliers, who got the third best record in the East, which is incredible. Jimmy Butler, of course. James Harden, I don't know about that one, man. Zach LaVine, that's an obvious one. People are debating whether Zach LaVine should have been a starter for the East, which I'm trying to think of the East All-Stars off the top of my head. I think it's Chris Middleton, DeMar DeRozan, KD, Giannis, and Embiid. I'm pretty sure those are the starters for the Eastern Conference. But Jason Tatum, who's had a great year, Chris Middleton, who's had a great season. So there you go. That's the reserves in the two conferences. Grady suggests AD probably gets it. I don't know. AD hasn't played that many games. Again, I'm trying so hard to think of all the. Well, let me look at the standings in the. Let me think of or go to the standings in the NBA to think of the teams and see would probably be a replacement for Draymond. So the Western Conference, you got the Suns, Warriors, Memphis, Utah, Dallas, Denver, Minnesota Clippers, Lakers, Blazers. Yeah, probably will. DeJounte Murray, possibly. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, maybe with a chance, but yeah, you're right. You're probably right. Anthony Davis might be the most likely replacement because Draymond, he's only 6'6", but he technically classifies as a big, so that's probably going to be what ends up happening. But there you go. So there's the All-Star. Excuse me. They're the All-Star reserves. Western Conference, Eastern Conference. So the All-Stars are set. We just got to see who replaces Draymond since he's hurt. But I believe the All-Star draft by the two team captains, once again, Team LeBron in the Western Conference, Team KD in the Eastern Conference. Next Thursday around this time, they'll draft their teams, which I think is great television. NBA did a really good job of doing that on TNT with Ernie, Kenny, Shaq, and Chuck. So, that's good stuff there, and I'm looking forward to seeing who goes where. So with that, what a show. Tom Brady retired. Brian Flores is suing 3 teams in the NFL, and a little bit of NBA All-Star talk. I call that a successful show today. So with that said, all the time you have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. And as always, please catch Carving Up tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here, wherever you're watching, on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. If you're listening to the Carving Up podcast, we appreciate that as well. You've been listening on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you're on YouTube, by the way, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that big red subscribe button. See that right there, the subscribe button, and share because it helps the channel grow exponentially. So see you on tomorrow's show. We got 10 days till Super Bowl 56. Man, I can't wait. It's going to be a fun one. Cincinnati and the Rams. So have a great evening, everybody. Continue to stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.